welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us in this session. Today we have Antonio Schettino in this session. And yeah, as I said, the session will be recorded. So please let us know if, or turn your camera off if you don't want to appear in the video. So you can, before we start, if you have any questions on the, to Antonio, please make sure to either at the end of the session, raise your hand, or because this is also a bit of a bit more hands-on session, he will be showing a few things at the same time. So please, if you have a question in between, just raise your hand or unmute yourself and ask it at the same, at that point, because he might be moving between different windows. So it's better that you clarify your questions at the moment when you have them. So to start this session, let me introduce myself very quickly. So my name is Liz Guzman-Ramirez, and I'm the research data steward for ERIM. I support all researchers from RSM and ESE. And together with me organizing this whole campaign are Antonio Schettino from Erasmus Research Services and Mutaleni Nadimi from the library, University Library. So if you're interested on open science practices, please make sure or consider joining the Open Science Community Rotterdam. Mutaleni will add the link into the chat. This community is where researchers and support staff help each other on learning, discussing, and adopting open science practices. And so please make sure to check it out. And if you're interested, join the community. As I mentioned, we welcome your questions in between the sessions, but also at the end is fine if you want to wait. So today we are honored to be joined by Antonio Schettino. He is the Open Science Coordinator, and he's working for the Erasmus Research Services, so the whole university sort of central. Antonio has a background in experimental psychology, cognitive and affective electropsychology. During his academic year, he investigated the relationship between emotions and visual perception using a wide range of methodological and statistical tools. He adopted transparent and open science practices at every stage of the research cycle. That's why he's here. As a coordinator of open science at the Erasmus Research Services, Antonio facilitates communications between research and support staff. He organizes events, as you can see from this session as well, and he communicates activities on social media as well. He supports individual researchers and research groups with the day-to-day activities related to open science. So if you have any question after this session, please just contact him. So today he will teach us how to use the open science framework to create a pre-registration. For people that are joining us now and that you go ahead and play around the pre-registration, we have a gift that we will want to give people. So we're going to do a raffle at the end of, because this is the second session of how to pre-register. So from everyone that sends a pre-registration, we will have a raffle and we will send you the gift. The gift, Antonio will let you know what it is. So without further ado, Antonio, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you for the nice introduction. So let me stop sharing my screen and start sharing my presentation. And that should be it. You should be able to see it. If not, just tell me. But anyway, thank you. Thank you very much. So today we're going to be talking about a bit like a more practical way of how to include pre-registration in your research workflow, in particular using a platform called Open Science Framework. So before starting, in case you have not followed any of the sessions on pre-registration during this campaign, first of all, don't worry because they are online. Second, it's a pity because it was great. But just to give you a bit of an idea of what pre-registration is, pre-registration is a document that specifies research design and analysis plan before the project starts. This document is uploaded on dedicated repositories, and one of them is the Open Science Framework. And the document is made public either immediately or after an embargo period. As you can see from this publication, the number of registrations uploaded only on one platform, only on the Open Science Framework, has grown exponentially since 2012, when the first people started experimenting with it. And now I'm pretty sure that we have reached more than 40,000 documents that can be accessible. This is a testament to the fact that in one way or another, people find it useful. And maybe it's also better to say a little bit why pre-registration might be useful. Um, let's say that it is um, a safe way of saying why pre-registration is useful is that it allows more transparent communication. Okay, so this, there is some information that can be shared earlier on in the research process, and this information can highlight, the possibility of, or can help the identification of cognitive biases. For example, confirmation biases, which is, the fact that humans tend to prefer information that supports their own beliefs. Motivated reasonings, rationalization that is like post hoc, after seeing, for example, the data, that can justify why we analyze them in a specific way. Hindsight bias, I knew it all along. Apophenia, which is identification of patterns in randomness, whereas there are no such patterns. And also researcher degrees of freedom. These are not actually, this is not a cognitive bias, but it's something that identifies the fact that there are many ways to analyze and interpret data, and it's important to transparently evaluate each of these ways. More generally, pre-registration allows to calibrate confidence on what you read in publications, and also the interpretation of the results. So there are many platforms that you can use to pre-register your work. One of the most used is the Open Science Framework, which is an online-only platform developed by the Center for Open Science, which is a nonprofit organization based in the US. And this platform helps researchers manage, document, and optionally share research output and workflow. It is free, so you can have an account by simply signing up. You don't have to pay anything. It is open source, so you can find on GitHub the code that generates the platform itself, and it's discipline agnostic. In the sense that it has a modular structure, so sort of like boxes within boxes. So it doesn't, it lends itself well to different ways of to different research workflows. If you are part of the Erasmus Graduate School of Social Sciences and Humanities, please know that the next edition of a specific tutorial on how to use the Open Science Framework will take place on April the 12th. So now let's go for a hands-on session. So let me just move away this. And let me show you the Open Science Framework, which is this. Okay, so I hope this is big enough. If not, just let me know. So the first thing that you have to do, of course, is either sign up if you don't have an account, but we assume that you have an account now, so you sign in. And then there are several ways to sign in. For now, just use email and password, but you can also sign in with ORCID, which is also another thing that we will see in a follow-up session in this campaign. So for now, I'm just going to sign in with username and password. And yes, of course, we will be on the dashboard, which is, very full because I used this since 2015. But then we can click here on the top left corner, and then we'll see OSF registries. So we can click on OSF registries. You'll be redirected to the OSF registries, which is basically a sort of search engine where you can find everything that has, every pre-registration that has been uploaded on the OSF so far. So it's good for searching, but in this case, we want to add the new pre-registration. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to click here on Add New. And the first step is, do you have content for registration in an existing project? So if you already have materials that you want to pre-register on the OSF, on the Open Science Framework, you can pre-register that as well. In our case, we don't have it. We're starting from scratch, so we're simply going to confirm that it's a no. And which type of registration would you like to create? This is due to the fact that there are several ready-made templates that are a bit more focused on some research workflows compared to others. For example, the OSF pre-registration template is more geared towards quantitative studies, whereas here, if you see here, there's qualitative pre-registration. This is a pre-registration template that has been developed for qualitative studies. So for now, You'll excuse me also due to my background. I'll just show you an example with the quantitative pre-registration template. Um, so you will create a draft. You will create a draft, which is not being created. That's fantastic. Oh, yes. It's just very slow. Okay. And this is this ready-made template. It is already embedded within the Open Science framework. And so what you can put here is information. It's called metadata. So information about the document that you are creating. So you can put a title. You can put a description. And if you can see here, I don't know what's happening. It's because I clicked 3 times. But if you see here, there is a red asterisk. This means that these fields are compulsory. So you cannot really continue without filling them out.
Antonio,
Yes.
someone in the audience is asking if we could zoom in a little bit more.
Yes, of course. Is it
Yeah,
better like this?
I think that's good. Thank you.
Okay. Yes, so you can also add contributors by clicking on this plus button. You can either add contributors who have an OSF account, or you can simply add them via email. So even if your collaborators are not on the OSF, they can still be part of this whole process. So this also means that, that there is no, it's not compulsory to create an OSF account. Here, there are affiliated institutions. Hopefully, in the near future, that you will also see Erasmus University, but for now, it's not present yet. And then here, there is a license. This is quite an important thing to remember. And also, one of the questions that I get more often when people are busy with pre-registrations. A license basically, as you can see here, it tells others how they can use your work in the future. No, if you don't put any license, this means that not only you retain the copyright, but also people cannot really do anything with it. It's just, it's as if it's even kind of useless that you put it publicly online, because nobody really knows how they can, how they can cite your work, how they can build upon your work. So it's very important to have a license here. Very often, for in most situations, a CC BY attribution 4.0 international is an appropriate way to go, because this license makes sure that others can reuse, modify, and cite your work, but the citation is compulsory. So they have to cite the source. So they have to cite this pre-registration, which is important, because you have put a lot of work in this. Then there are some subjects related to your area of research, and then some tags to enhance discoverability. And then I will click on next. Then there is a study information in which you are asked to list some hypotheses related to your study, in case you have hypotheses, right? So here, as I said, we're using a pre-registration template that is mostly focused on hypothesis testing kind of research. It doesn't necessarily always have to be like this. It depends. But in this case, it is clear that it is highly encouraged to list specific, concise, and testable hypotheses. The more specific you are, the better it is. Not only for others that can better evaluate what you were thinking about before even looking, before starting your project, but it's also important for yourself, because it is very often the case, at least is what I've seen in my own work, that you thought you knew why you were doing what you were doing, and then you go back and you're like, hey, wait, actually, that's exactly what I was thinking about. So it's very good also to help your future self. What you can see here is that for some fields, there are some examples. So you can click, and in case, I would say this is a very basic example. I would not really consider it as a specific, concise, and testable hypothesis. But surely you can use this as an example, as an inspiration to have your own more specific hypothesis. Then we can click on next. And then we can have a design plan. You can register, like an experiment, an observational study, a meta-analysis, or something else that you can specify. You can decide, you can say whether there's going to be blinding in case you are testing, for example, human participants. There are some fields that you can add that are not compulsory. and then like a description of your study design that doesn't necessarily need to be only and exclusively in words, but it can also be like as a for example as a script, if you think if you have some scripts that help your future self and others understand your design. So you can click here on the plus button and you can add other files, whatever you think is appropriate for this particular section of study design. And also randomization if you're doing a randomized study. So we go click on next. And then, so here is about the sampling plan. So here it's the question asks whether there's already data that you are going to that have already been collected that you're going to be using in this study. So very often this template is used prior to creation of data. But as you can see, there are other options, for example, registration prior to any human observation of the data. For example, you know that somebody else has collected the information, but you haven't had access to this, so you can click here. There are other templates that are better, for example, for secondary data analysis. So probably, I would recommend going for a secondary data analysis template. And also, I would not recommend going, registering following analysis of the data. I consider it a waste of time because everything has already happened. So you have not done it, so it's fine. It's good. It's okay not to have a pre-registration if you have already finished your experiment. You can do it another time. Here is also, there is an explanation. If you want, you can give an explanation of the existing data that you have already collected or somebody else has collected. And also the kind of procedures that will be used. And again, if you have some examples, you can click this plus and you can add additional files. Then here you have sample size, so the planned sample size in case, for example, you're testing, I don't know, like if you're doing animal testing, if you're testing human participants, it's good to have a justification of your sample size. Some justifications are, better than others. For example, if possible, a statistical power analysis would be more informative compared to simply saying, yeah, I've only got time to test X number of people. But the important thing here is the transparency. So even if you have, like for this particular experiment, you don't really have, like the ability or the possibility to do a power analysis, that's fine. Just say, this is why we decided to go for this particular sample size. It's about transparency. And the same goes for the rationale. And then if you are testing up until a certain point, so if you have a stopping rule, it's good to write here what your stopping rule is going to be, especially if it's related to your statistics. Then we click on next. And then, of course, there are manipulated variables. Of course, it depends on your experiment. You might have manipulated variables, only observed variables. It depends. But once again, if you think that words are not enough, you can add additional files. Of course, measured variables for this particular template, they're quite important. So you'll be asked to define each variable that you will measure. Again, with the possibility to add more information. And then if you already plan to make some transformations on the data, extracting some indices, you will be asked, if, optionally to add here what you plan to do. And once again, if you have some scripts, for example, that already do it automatically, why not put it in here already? Then we click on next. And then there's going to be the analysis plan. This is also a very important part of this pre-registration template. The statistical models that you plan to run to test your hypothesis. So make sure that there is a correspondence between your hypothesis and the kind of statistical test that you want to run in order to answer your question, your research question. And once again, you have scripts. You can just add them here. As I mentioned, if you plan transformations, if you plan, for example, to test using classical, like a frequentist testing, you might want to say, okay, so what is my, my alpha level? What's the, the p-value threshold that I'm going to use? If you're using Bayes factors, is there a specific Bayes factor that is going to be, like it's going to be like the decision criteria for you? If you're doing model comparison, what kind of model fit in the index are you going to use? And then, like how will you handle outliers? Because outliers can be, handled in many different ways. They can be ignored sometimes because the statistical model takes into account outliers in itself. So it's important to specify this. And also for missing data, if some data are missing, are you going to impute them using a specific kind of algorithm, or are you going to throw away all your your participant or your subject? And last but not least, here there is an exploratory analysis section, which is something that I typically do not really recommend, because if you an exploratory analysis is something that, at least the way I understand it, is related to, like, after seeing the data, oh, look, there's something that I didn't think about. So I'm going to explore this question. But if you can already think about some questions before you even collect the data, maybe that can be another hypothesis. So maybe it's not an exploratory analysis. So if we click on next, we will go to the last section, which is other, which is typically used for bibliography or for some other minor things. And then we click on the review, because then what you can do, you can review everything that you have put in here. And then you can, you can see that I cannot register it because, of course, this is not complete. But if everything is fine, then you can click on register, and you will see something that I'm going to show you now, which is this. Okay, so basically you will see. Let me just use a slideshow. Yes, so basically you will see this pop-up window that will say, okay, just keep in mind that you cannot really modify or delete a registration. You can withdraw it, but it's not like a full, it's not, it's going to disappear from the face of the earth. There will be a notification saying, hey, this is the title, these are all the metadata, this is the information that we had, and this is also, this pre-registration has been withdrawn. But here it's like to give you a bit of an idea of the kind of procedure before the actual submission. Contributors have 48 hours to approve or to cancel the submission. So not only the person who actually created a pre-registration, but all the contributors. The pre-registration is published either immediately or after an embargo period, if you put it. If all the contributors have approved the submission, or after 48 hours, once you click the submit button. So here I'm just going to go through very quickly some examples just to tell you that they exist. One is from myself and other colleagues of mine, and we use the pre-registration template that I just showed you. Then there is another one on qualitative pre-registration template that I mentioned earlier. And this is an open-ended pre-registration template, which I thought was really fantastic, because the open-ended pre-registration template can be nothing, but this was everything. It was so nicely detailed that I always use it as a virtuous example. Of course, I don't have time to go through all the things that you can do, but keep in mind that you can update a pre-registration, some aspects of it at least. You can create view-only anonymized links to a pre-registration in case you want to send it to reviewers, for example. You can even end an embargo earlier than planned, or as I mentioned earlier, you can withdraw pre-registration. There are other useful resources that you can find on the slides that are going to be made available, obviously. And here I just want to point out that the Open Science Framework has guides and YouTube tutorials that you can refer to. Last but not least, the Raffle that Liz was already talking about. You can send us your pre-registration. So you can either create a new one following what you have learned today, or you can use a pre-registration that you already created on the OSF. It's totally fine. It's completely up to you. The pre-registration can be public, so it's publicly available. And if that's the case, you can just send us the DOI. Or it can be embargoed. If that's the case, you can send us a view-only link. Yeah, maybe if you want us to know that it's you, you shouldn't give it to us anonymized, but keep in mind that it can also be anonymized in case, like you just want to participate and you don't want the prize. I don't know. Who wouldn't want the prize? I'm going to show you now. It's amazing. If you have several pre-registrations, send only one so that we give to everybody the equal chances to win. You can send an email to info@opensciencerotterdam.com. And this is what you can win, which is a super cool magnifying glass. It's amazing. I look forward to seeing it. And I'm pretty sure that you also will also love it. That's it. Thank you. Now I'm ready for questions.
Thank you so much, Antonio. Very nice. Thank you. Yeah, people are clapping in the audience. Thanks a lot. Are there any questions from the audience? I don't see anything on the chat. No. Okay. I do have a question actually. When you, for example, add your code, let's say to the pre-registration, I assume the code can have a different license than the pre-registration, right? Is this so? Then inside your project, you choose the license for the code.
Yeah, exactly. So every time you upload something, it will basically be uploaded on the parallel OSF project that you create, right? Because as I said, every time you have a registration, it's connected to a project.
Yeah.
And then within the OSF, you can have different licenses. Worst case scenario, I don't think you would never need it, but you can simply add a text file with the license.
Yeah.
So it's really not a problem.
Okay. Yeah, there is a question, a hand rising. Yes, please, Sophia, can you unmute yourself?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much, Antonio. This is very interesting. And I have a question for you. So do you have any recommendation? So you presented OSF, and to be honest, up until now, I was mostly using OSF for making my data available, for making my syntax available, but I never used it for pre-registration. And I use for pre-registration, I think it's called, and I thought it's called preregister, but maybe I'm wrong. I was now trying to find in my documents for the paper that I use. So in essence, did you check other platforms for pre-registration, and is there a reason why you basically mostly use OSF as compared to other platforms?
Yeah, thank you. That's a very important question because I don't want to be seen as the kind of person who only pushes the OSF. I'm not paid by the Center for Open Science, right? But there are several advantages in pre-registering on the OSF compared to other platforms. For example, there are some platforms that do not make it. I'm not talking about the platform that you are mentioning. I'm saying in general, there can be other platforms that do not allow to clearly trace back, like the pre-registration, all the pre-registered documents. So in principle, these systems can be misused. For example, imagine that I don't know exactly what I'm going to find in my experiment, in my results, but I want to tell everybody that I've pre-registered. So I pre-registered 10 possible, I make 10 possible pre-registrations with all the possible options that I have. And then I will only highlight the pre-registration that actually fulfilled my expectations after checking the data. And if you don't have a system that allows you to trace all the pre-registrations for each individual author, well, then it can be a bit problematic. So the OSF allows you to do this, and some other platforms don't allow you. Another advantage is that if you have an OSF project where you already have maybe your data, your code, maybe you have already linked to your preprint, then you can also link your pre-registration. So what you have is in one place, your OSF project, everything that you need. It's a sort of like it's a whole work package instead of going on different services.
Thank you so much. Yeah, that definitely makes sense. Thanks a lot. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you. Since we are running out of time, I don't know if there's a quick comment or question, but if there isn't anything, then just the last question that we ask all our participants, and I'm going to ask to you again. If you had to choose one open science practice that is necessary to ensure transparency in your field, what would that be?
Yes, as I already mentioned last week, I think there are many practices that are very important, but what I would like to see a bit more often is open code, because this helps identify, so better understand what people did, to the raw data in terms of transformations, in terms of analysis. Something that you can also do if you share your code. What you could also do is share code of synthetic or simulated data sets. So imagine that you don't have the possibility to share your data because they are sensitive or because there's some intellectual property rights that need to be taken into account. With code, you can give the code that generates a synthetic data set that makes, that is very similar to the data that you cannot share. And this can also facilitate better, more reproducibility, also in terms of data generation.
Yeah, excellent. Thank you so much. All right. Well, thank you everyone for joining. As you probably already know, we have more sessions coming. So if you want to register for the coming sessions, please do so. Mutaleni will put the link in the chat, as she already did. It was great to see you. Thank you for the questions. And if you have any other questions, please let us know. Contact us. And hope to see you in the next sessions. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Thank you, Antonio. Thank you, Lisa.
Thank you.